Chosen one, something has shifted in the unseen, and you felt it before you even understood it. There is a stillness in this moment that is not ordinary, a quiet urgency that carries the weight of heaven's timing. You did not find this message by accident. This is a divine interruption, and your name is written inside it. Anointed One. There are truths that could not be revealed to you before, not because you were forgotten, but because you were being formed. Just as it is spoken in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 1, there is a time for everything, and your time of hidden preparation has reached its appointed moment. What was covered is now being uncovered. What was delayed is now aligning. You have walked through seasons where nothing made sense, where silence felt heavy and answers felt distant. But heaven was not silent without purpose. You were being strengthened to carry what is about to be revealed. This is not just information, this is unveiling. This is the moment where what has been happening behind the scenes begins to surface in your life with clarity and power. Stay with this message, Chosen One, because what is about to be revealed next will change how you understand everything you have been through. There is something you need to understand right now. Chosen One, before your mind tries to explain away what your spirit already recognizes. What you survived was never just survival. It was selection. It was filtration. It was the separating of who you used to be from who you were always meant to become. Anointed One. You remember those nights. The ones where everything felt uncertain, where the silence stretched so long you began to question if anyone was listening at all. You kept showing up, kept believing, even when there was no visible movement. And if you are honest, there were moments you almost gave up, not because you were weak, but because you were human. But something in you refused to break. And that is the part heaven was watching. You see, there are levels of truth that cannot be released to a version of you that has not yet been refined, not because you were unworthy, but because you were still becoming. There are revelations that carry weight, and if they arrive too early, they do not build you, they crush you. That is why the silence lasted longer than you expected. It was not absence, it was protection. It was formation happening where no one could interrupt it. Think about it carefully. There were situations that did not make sense at the time, doors that closed without explanation, people who walked away without warning, opportunities that slipped through your hands just when you thought they were finally yours. You tried to understand it, tried to make sense of it, but nothing added up. But what you could not see then is becoming clear now. You were being pulled away from what could not carry your future. There are paths that look promising, but would have trapped you in a smaller version of your destiny. There are connections that feel right in the moment, but would have drained what God placed inside of you. And there are opportunities that seem like breakthroughs, but are actually distractions in disguise. So the delays came. Not to deny you, but to redirect you. And I know what that feels like. I have walked through seasons where nothing moved the way I expected, where I had to trust without evidence, where I had to keep going without confirmation. It is not easy to stay aligned when everything around you feels out of place. But that is where transformation happens. Not in the visible moments, but in the hidden ones. Just like it is spoken in Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 3, the vision waits for its appointed time, and though it tarries, it will not lie. That waiting was not empty. It was precise. It was intentional. It was calibrating something inside you so that when the moment arrived, you would not mishandle it. Because here is the truth, most people never say clearly. Not every blessing is safe for an unprepared spirit. There are levels of access, influence, and provision that require internal stability before they can be sustained externally. Without that, what looks like elevation can quickly turn into collapse, and heaven was not willing to let that happen to you. So you were shaped in ways that were uncomfortable. You were stretched in ways that did not make sense. You were placed in environments that tested your patience, your integrity, your ability to remain grounded when everything around you felt uncertain. And slowly, without you even realizing it, something began to change. Your reactions shifted, your discernment deepened, your tolerance for what did not align started to fade. You began to outgrow spaces that once felt normal, and that is when the transition truly began. Because growth is not always loud, sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is the subtle realization that who you used to be no longer fits where you are going. And that can feel isolating. There is a kind of loneliness that comes with elevation before it becomes visible. You are no longer who you were, but you have not yet stepped into what you are becoming. You are in between, and that space can feel uncomfortable. But that space is sacred. It is the place where identity is rewritten. It is the place where your foundation is strengthened. It is the place where your capacity is expanded. And you have been standing in that space longer than you realize. That is why this moment feels different. There is a shift in how things are aligning around you, even if you cannot fully explain it yet. Conversations are beginning to carry more weight. Opportunities are starting to appear with a different kind of energy. There is a subtle sense that something is moving, even if it has not fully revealed itself. That is not your imagination. That is alignment beginning to surface. But before anything becomes fully visible, there is one truth that must settle within you completely. Because if this truth is not anchored in you, you may misinterpret what is about to unfold. And what you misunderstand, you can easily mishandle. Because what is coming next is not just about what you will receive, it is about who you must become to carry it. There is a subtle shift that happens right before everything changes. Chosen one, and most people miss it because it does not announce itself loudly. It does not arrive with certainty or full clarity. It begins quietly, almost like a whisper, beneath the surface of your thoughts, a sense that something no longer fits the way it used to. You may not be able to explain it to anyone, but you feel it. The same environments feel different. The same routines feel heavier. The same conversations feel empty. And you start to realize that what once sustained you can no longer hold you. This is not confusion. This is transition. Anointed one, you are not losing direction. You are shedding what no longer aligns with where you are being led. There are parts of your life that were necessary for a season, but they were never meant to be permanent. And now, without force, without conflict, you are being moved beyond them. Not because they were wrong, but because they are complete. And completion can feel uncomfortable when you are used to holding on. There is a tendency to stay where things are familiar, even when you know deep down you have outgrown it. You try to make it work. You try to adjust yourself to fit what no longer reflects who you are becoming. But the more you try, the more resistance you feel. Not external resistance, but internal. A quiet friction that tells you something is no longer in alignment. That friction is not your enemy, it is your signal. Because what is ahead of you requires space that your current environment cannot provide. And this is where many hesitate. Not because they lack faith, but because they are standing at the edge of something new without having full visibility of what comes next. It feels like stepping forward without a complete map. And the mind wants certainty before movement, but the spirit does not operate that way. There are moments when clarity comes after the step, not before it. You have already experienced this in smaller ways. Times when you felt prompted to move, to shift, to release something, even when it did not fully make sense at the time. And later you saw why it had to happen that way. This moment is similar, but on a deeper level. The stakes feel higher, the shift feels bigger, and that is why your awareness is increasing. You are no longer moving unconsciously. You are becoming intentional. That is part of the preparation. Because what is coming into your life is not random opportunity. It is structured alignment. It is something that has been building behind the scenes, piece by piece, connection by connection, moment by moment. And now those pieces are beginning to move into place. You may not see the full picture yet, but you can feel the movement. There is a difference between forcing something to happen and recognizing when something is already unfolding. In the past, you may have tried to push doors open to prove your value, to create opportunities through effort alone. But this time will feel different. There will be a sense of recognition rather than striving. A sense that what is meant for you is not resisting you. And that may feel unfamiliar at first, because you have been trained in seasons where nothing came easily. You learned how to endure, how to persist, how to survive in environments that required constant effort just to maintain stability. But what is ahead of you is not built on the same pattern. It is not sustained by struggle. It is sustained by alignment. And alignment does not require force. It requires awareness. This is where your discernment becomes critical, because not everything that appears will be for you, even in a season of increase. There will be options, opportunities, and invitations that look good on the surface, but only one will carry the weight of what has been prepared specifically for you. And you will know the difference, not through pressure, not through urgency, but through peace. There is a kind of peace that does not remove the stretch, but it removes the confusion. It allows you to move forward even when you do not have every detail, because something within you recognizes the direction. It does not feel forced, it feels right. That is how alignment speaks. But there is still something within you that must adjust before you fully step into what is being prepared. It is not about your external circumstances, it is about your internal agreement. Because if your mindset remains anchored in what you have outgrown, you may hesitate when the door appears. You may question what is actually meant for you. You may second-guess what has already been aligned. And hesitation at the wrong moment can delay what has already been set in motion. That is why this shift is happening inside you first. You are being brought into agreement with what has already been established beyond your current awareness. You are being positioned to recognize what is yours when it arrives, not to doubt it, not to shrink from it, but to step into it with clarity. Because the next phase of your life will not be built on survival, it will be built on recognition. Recognition of who you are, recognition of what you carry, recognition of what has been prepared for you. And that recognition is what will determine how you respond when everything begins to unfold in a way you did not expect. What begins to unfold next? Chosen one will not look the way you imagined it would, and that is intentional. Because if it came in the form you expected, you might try to control it instead of recognizing it. But what is being arranged for you is not meant to be managed by your past understanding. It is meant to be received through a deeper level of trust. There is a moment approaching where something will present itself in a way that feels almost ordinary on the surface, yet carries an unusual weight beneath it. A conversation, a connection, an opportunity that does not demand your performance, but instead seems to recognize you without effort. And that is where you must pay attention. Because what is aligned with your purpose will not require you to prove your worth. It will meet you in the truth of who you have already become. Anointed One. This is where many miss what was meant for them. They have been conditioned to fight for everything, to chase validation, to push until something opens. So when something finally arrives with ease, they question it. They hesitate. They look for complications because they have been trained to associate struggle with value. But what is coming is not built on that pattern. It will feel different because it is different. And this difference may challenge your perception more than your circumstances. Because there is still a part of you that remembers what it felt like to be overlooked, to be dismissed, to not be seen for what you carried. And even though you have grown beyond that season, the memory of it can still influence how you interpret what is happening now. You may wonder if it is real, if it will last, if it will disappear the way other things once did. That is not weakness, that is residue. But that residue cannot lead you into this next season. You are no longer the person who has to fight to be recognized. You are the one who is being revealed. And there is a difference between those two positions. One is rooted in striving. The other is rooted in alignment. You are stepping out of a life where you had to convince others of your value and into a space where your value is already evident. Not because you suddenly changed, but because the timing has changed. There are moments when what has always been within you becomes visible in the right environment. And when that moment arrives, it does not feel forced. It feels natural. It feels like something that was always meant to happen, even if you could not see how it would come together. This is where the preparation you went through begins to make sense in real time. The lessons you learned in isolation, the discipline you developed without recognition, the strength you built in silence, all of it starts to connect to what is now being placed in front of you. You begin to realize that nothing was wasted. Every experience, even the ones that felt unnecessary, were forming something that is now required. Because what is coming is not just an opportunity, it is a responsibility. And responsibility requires capacity. There are things that will be entrusted to you that extend beyond your personal benefit. Influence, access, connections, insight. And how you carry these things will determine how far this season can expand. Because increase without understanding becomes unstable. That is why your foundation had to be strengthened first. That is why your character had to be refined. That is why your discernment had to grow. Because what you are stepping into will not only elevate you, it will position you in ways that affect others. And when your life begins to impact more than just yourself, the way you move matters differently. This is where your awareness deepens. You begin to notice how you respond to recognition. Whether you remain grounded or become distracted, whether you stay aligned with purpose or shift toward validation. Because the same opportunity that can elevate you can also expose where you are not yet anchored. And this is not something to fear, it is something to be conscious of. Because you have already been given what you need to navigate this. The strength you built in hidden places will carry you in visible ones. The patience you developed in waiting will guide you in movement. The clarity you gained through hardship will protect you in expansion. Nothing about this is unfamiliar to your spirit, even if it feels new to your mind. That is why there is a sense of recognition within you even now. A quiet knowing that something is aligning, a subtle awareness that what you have been waiting for is not distant anymore, it is approaching. But there is still one layer that must be addressed before everything fully reveals itself. Because as this alignment becomes more visible, there will also be resistance. Not in the same way you experienced before, but in a more subtle form. And if you do not recognize it, it can influence how you respond at the exact moment that matters most. The resistance you are about to face will not come in the form you are used to. Chosen one, and that is why it is so important that you recognize it for what it is. It will not look like obvious opposition. It will not feel like external attack. It will feel like hesitation. It will feel like overthinking. It will feel like a quiet pull to slow down right when everything is beginning to move. And if you are not aware, you may mistake it for wisdom. Anointed One. There are habits that were formed in your hardest seasons that kept you safe at the time. You learned how to guard your expectations. You learned how to stay cautious so you would not be disappointed again. You learned how to prepare for things to fall apart so you would not be caught off guard. Those patterns protected you when you needed protection. But they cannot lead you where you are going now, because what once kept you stable can now keep you stuck. This is the kind of resistance that does not shout. It whispers. It suggests that you should wait a little longer. It tells you to analyze just one more time. It convinces you that you are not fully ready, even though everything has already been aligned. And this is where the shift must happen. You are no longer responding from a place of fear. You are responding from a place of alignment. There is a difference between discernment and hesitation, and you must learn to recognize it clearly. Discernment brings clarity even when the path is not fully visible. Hesitation brings confusion even when the opportunity is clear. Discernment moves you forward with peace. Hesitation keeps you circling in doubt. And the moment you are approaching will require movement. Not reckless movement, not forced action, but a willingness to step forward without needing complete control. Because the next phase of your life is not something you will be able to manage from a distance. It requires your presence. It requires your engagement. It requires your response. And that response will reveal what has truly been established within you. You may feel it as a tension between what is familiar and what is possible. A part of you may want to retreat into what you already understand, into what you have already mastered, into what feels predictable. But another part of you, the deeper part, the one that has been growing through everything you have walked through, knows that staying the same is no longer an option. That is the moment of decision. Not loud, not dramatic, but defining. Because this is where you either step into what has been prepared or remain in what has already been completed. And you cannot carry both. There are mindsets that cannot follow you into this next season. The version of you that expected to be overlooked, the version that prepared for rejection, the version that minimized what you carried in order to stay comfortable in certain environments, that version must be released. Not rejected, not denied, but acknowledged as complete. Because you are not stepping into this as someone trying to be chosen. You are stepping into this as someone who has already been chosen. That understanding changes everything. It changes how you speak. It changes how you respond. It changes how you carry yourself in moments where you would have once shrunk back. And it does not come from pride. It comes from clarity. The clarity that your value is not determined by how others respond to you, but by what has already been placed within you. And when that clarity settles, your movements begin to shift. You stop over-explaining. You stop overcompensating. You stop trying to earn what has already been aligned. You begin to move with quiet confidence, not because everything is certain, but because you are. And that is what will allow you to step through the door when it appears, because the door will not force you to walk through it. It will present itself, and your response will determine what happens next. There is also something else you must be aware of in this moment. As alignment increases, attention will follow. People will begin to notice you in ways they did not before. Conversations will change. The way you are perceived will shift. And if you are not anchored, you can become distracted by that. You can begin to focus on how you are being seen instead of why you are being positioned. But attention is not the assignment. It is a byproduct of alignment. And if you confuse the two, you can lose sight of what actually matters. Because what is being placed in your life is not just about visibility. It is about responsibility. It is about stewardship. It is about what you do with what has been entrusted to you. And that is why your preparation was so specific. You were not just being prepared to receive, you were being prepared to carry. To carry influence without losing humility. To carry opportunity without losing focus. To carry expansion without losing alignment. And now, as everything begins to move, you will see why it had to happen this way. But before that becomes fully clear, there is one final layer that must be understood. Because what happens in the next moment will not only reveal what is being given to you, it will reveal how ready you truly are to receive it. What reveals your readiness in this moment, chosen one, will not be how confident you feel, but how aligned you are when the opportunity becomes real. Because there is a difference between imagining a new season and standing inside of it. It is one thing to pray for change, to believe for something greater, to hold on to a vision during difficult times. It is another thing entirely when that vision begins to take form in front of you and requires your response. This is where many hesitate, not because they are unworthy, but because reality carries a weight that imagination does not. When something is still distant, it is easy to believe in it. But when it stands in front of you, when it asks for your voice, your presence, your decision, it can feel overwhelming in a way you did not expect. And that feeling is not a sign to retreat. It is a sign that what you prayed for has arrived. Anointed one. There is a moment that comes when preparation meets visibility, and that moment does not ask if you feel ready. It reveals that you are ready. It brings everything you have been developing in silence into a space where it can be expressed, applied, and carried forward. And this is where your internal agreement matters most. Because if your mind is still anchored in your past, you may question what your spirit already recognizes. You may look at what is in front of you and wonder if it is truly meant for you. You may measure the opportunity against who you used to be instead of who you have become. But you are not who you used to be. And this moment is not meant for that version of you. There is a new level of identity that must take its place here. Not something you have to create, but something you have to accept. The identity that was formed through everything you endured, everything you learned, everything you chose when it would have been easier to give up. That identity is what qualifies you now. Not perfection, not external validation, alignment. And alignment is what allows you to stand in a moment without shrinking, even when the moment feels bigger than anything you have experienced before. You may feel it as a mixture of clarity and stretch. A sense that this is right, even though it requires you to step beyond what is comfortable. That is how growth speaks. It does not remove the stretch, but it removes the confusion. And in that clarity, you will know what to do. There will not be pressure. There will not be fear. There will be a steady awareness that this is the direction you are meant to move in. That is the difference between force and alignment. Force pushes, alignment invites. And what is being presented to you will not need to be forced. It will meet you. But as it does, there is something else that will be revealed at the same time. Not about the opportunity, but about you. Because when something significant enters your life, it exposes how you see yourself at the deepest level. If you still see yourself as someone who has to prove their worth, you may overextend yourself. If you still see yourself as someone who might lose what they gain, you may hold back. If you still see yourself through the lens of past disappointment, you may question what is actually secure. And this is where the final adjustment must happen. You must see yourself as someone who is able to carry what has been placed in front of you. Not because you have everything figured out, but because you are aligned with the one who does. This is where trust becomes active, not passive belief, but movement. Movement that says you are willing to step forward even without having every detail. Movement that says you trust what has been arranged beyond what you can currently see. Movement that says you are no longer waiting for confirmation because you recognize that this is the confirmation. And that movement will shift everything. Because when you respond in alignment, what is already prepared begins to unfold with greater clarity. The next step becomes visible after you take the first one. The connection deepens after you engage with it. The opportunity expands as you move within it. Nothing about this is static, it is responsive, and your response is what activates what comes next. There will also be a release that happens here. Not forced, not dramatic, but natural. Things that once felt necessary will no longer hold the same weight. Attachments that once felt strong will begin to loosen, not because you are rejecting them, but because you are no longer dependent on them. That is what growth does. It simplifies what once felt complicated. It clarifies what once felt uncertain. It removes what no longer aligns without struggle. And as that happens, you will begin to feel a sense of space. Not emptiness, but capacity. Capacity for what is entering your life. Capacity for what you are about to carry. Capacity for what is about to unfold. And in that space, something important will become clear. This is not just a moment of receiving, it is a moment of becoming. Because what you step into now will shape how everything that follows begins to develop. And the way you respond in this moment will determine how far this alignment is able to expand into your life. What begins to settle within you now? Chosen one is something deeper than excitement and stronger than emotion. It is a quiet certainty that does not need constant reassurance. It is the awareness that you are no longer standing at the edge of possibility, but inside the beginning of it. And once that realization takes hold, your relationship with everything around you starts to change. You stop looking at life as something you are waiting to enter, and you begin to recognize that you are already in motion. The things that once felt distant begin to feel accessible. The future you imagined no longer feels like a separate reality. It starts to feel connected to your present in a way that is tangible, even if it is still unfolding. Anointed one. This is the shift from anticipation to participation. You are no longer preparing for something to happen. You are learning how to move within what has already started. And this is where your awareness must remain steady. Because as movement increases, so does complexity. Not in a negative sense, but in a way that requires deeper alignment. More opportunities may appear. More connections may begin to form. More doors may open in ways that you did not expect. And with that expansion comes the need to remain centered. Not every open door is your direction. Not every connection is your assignment. And this is where your discernment must remain active. You have grown beyond the need to chase everything that looks like progress. You are now able to recognize what carries alignment and what does not. That recognition will not always come through logic. It will come through a sense of clarity that is consistent even when the details are still forming. There is a difference between something that excites you and something that aligns with you. Excitement is temporary, alignment is sustaining, and what is meant for you will not only move you emotionally, it will hold you steadily as you move through it. This is how you will know, because even as things begin to accelerate, there will be a center within you that does not rush. A place that remains grounded even when external movement increases. That stability is not something you have to create. It has already been built through everything you have walked through. You learned how to remain steady when nothing was moving. Now you are learning how to remain steady when everything is. That is a different kind of strength, and it is one that not everyone develops. Because many people can handle waiting, but they struggle with movement. They become overwhelmed when things begin to unfold quickly. They lose clarity when options increase. They lose alignment when attention grows. But you have been prepared for this. The same discipline that sustained you in stillness will sustain you in motion. The same awareness that guided you through uncertainty will guide you through expansion. Nothing about this is separate from what you have already learned. It is an extension of it. You may also notice that your sense of identity continues to deepen in this phase, not in a way that draws attention to itself, but in a way that feels settled. You are no longer trying to define who you are based on external circumstances. You are becoming rooted in something that does not shift with outcomes, and that is what allows you to move with consistency. Because when your identity is stable, your decisions become clearer. You are not reacting, you are responding. There is a difference. Reaction is driven by external triggers. Response is guided by internal alignment. And as you move forward, your responses will begin to shape what unfolds around you. The way you engage with opportunities, the way you navigate conversations, the way you carry yourself in moments of visibility, all of it will influence how this season develops. This is where stewardship becomes real. Not as a concept, but as a daily expression. You are not just receiving more, you are managing more, you are carrying more, and how you handle that will determine what continues to grow. Because increase is not sustained by desire, it is sustained by alignment. There will also be moments where you are required to act with clarity even when you do not have complete understanding. This is where trust becomes active again, not as a feeling but as a decision to move forward based on what you know rather than waiting for what you do not. That is how direction is revealed. Not all at once, but step by step. As it is spoken in Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9, a man plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. That direction often comes through movement, not before it. And you are now in a place where movement is required. Not constant activity, but intentional steps. Steps that align with what has been revealed to you. Steps that reflect the identity you have grown into. Steps that confirm you are no longer waiting, but walking. And as you continue in this, something else will begin to settle within you. A deeper sense of peace. Not the kind that comes from everything being easy, but the kind that comes from knowing you are where you are meant to be. A peace that does not depend on outcomes, but remains consistent through the process. That peace will become your anchor. It will guide you when decisions need to be made. It will ground you when things begin to expand. It will remind you that you are not navigating this alone, because the same presence that carried you through uncertainty is now carrying you through clarity, and that presence has not changed. Only your awareness of it has. But even with all of this alignment, all of this movement, all of this clarity, there is still one final understanding that must take root within you completely. Because without it, you may step into this season and still miss the fullness of what it was meant to become. What must take root within you now? Chosen one is the understanding that this moment is not the destination you have been waiting for. It is the doorway into a greater responsibility, a deeper alignment, and a wider reach than you have ever carried before. If you see this only as arrival, you will limit what it was designed to become. But if you recognize it as initiation, everything about how you move from here will change. Anointed One. What has been placed in your hands is not just opportunity. It is trust. It is evidence that what was built in you during hidden seasons can now be expressed in visible ones without losing its foundation. And that is where your focus must remain. Not on what you gain, but on how you carry it. Because increase does not test your ability to receive. It tests your ability to remain aligned while you have more to manage. There will be moments when things expand beyond what you are used to. More access, more influence, more responsibility. And in those moments, it becomes easy to drift if you are not anchored. Not intentionally, but gradually. You begin to rely on what you have gained instead of what has guided you. You begin to move based on what is visible instead of what is aligned. That is how people lose what they were given. Not in one decision, but in small shifts away from what grounded them. But you have already been prepared differently. You have experienced what it means to have nothing visible to hold on to and still remain steady. You have learned how to trust when there was no evidence. You have built a connection that is not dependent on outcomes, and that is what will sustain you now. Because the same alignment that brought you here is the same alignment that will carry you forward. There is no new method required, only consistency in what has already been established. You may notice that your perspective on success begins to shift as you continue. What once felt like the goal now feels like the beginning, because you start to see that what matters is not what you accumulate, but what flows through you. The way your decisions impact others, the way your presence influences environments, the way what you carry creates space for others to grow. That is where purpose becomes clear, not in what you receive, but in what you release. And this is where your life begins to extend beyond your personal story. The connections that form the doors that open, the opportunities that develop, all of it becomes part of something larger than what you can fully see. You begin to realize that you are not just moving for yourself. You are moving within a structure that connects to people, to outcomes, to moments that have not yet unfolded. And that awareness changes how you carry everything. You become more intentional, more grounded, more aware of how each decision contributes to what is being built. This is where stewardship becomes natural, not forced. You do not have to remind yourself to stay aligned. You recognize that alignment is what sustains everything that has been given to you, and that recognition keeps you steady even as things continue to expand. There will still be growth ahead. This is not the end of your development. It is the expansion of it. New challenges will come not to break you, but to stretch you into greater capacity. New levels of understanding will be required not to confuse you, but to deepen your clarity. And through all of it, the same foundation that carried you here will remain. As it is spoken in Luke chapter 16 verse 10, whoever is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much. You have already proven that faithfulness in places where no one saw you. Now you are continuing that same faithfulness in places where you are seen. Nothing about who you are needs to change, only the scale at which you apply it. And that is what allows this season to continue unfolding beyond what you can currently imagine. You will begin to see connections between things that once felt separate. The waiting, the preparation, the resistance, the alignment, all of it will make sense in a way that feels complete. Not because everything is finished, but because everything is connected. There is no wasted part of your journey. There is no isolated moment. Everything has led here, and everything from here will continue to build. Because what has begun in your life is not limited to one opportunity, one connection, or one season. It is the beginning of a flow that will continue as long as you remain aligned with what has been established within you. And as you stand in this moment, not waiting, not wondering, but recognizing, there is a quiet truth that settles deeper than anything else. You were never overlooked. You were never behind. You were never forgotten. You were being positioned with precision, and now you are no longer asking when it will begin. You are walking inside of it. And from this point forward, chosen one, everything that unfolds will not be something you are trying to reach. It will be something that recognizes you as you move. Chosen one, this moment is not passing you by. It is settling into your life with divine precision. What has been revealed to you is not just insight, it is activation. You are standing in a kairos moment, a time that heaven appointed long before you understood what you were being prepared for. Anointed one. Even now, things are shifting quietly around you. Connections are aligning, doors are adjusting, and what once felt delayed is beginning to move with purpose. You may not see every detail yet, but trust that what is meant for you is already responding to your obedience and your alignment. I speak peace over your mind, clarity over your decisions, and confidence over your steps. May you walk forward without hesitation, anchored in who you have become and steady in what God has placed within you. You are not behind, you are not late, you are right on time. If this word has settled in your spirit, write Amen below as your agreement with what is unfolding. Stay connected, chosen one, and subscribe so you do not miss what heaven continues to reveal for your journey. And as you move forward from here, carry this knowing with you. What has begun will not be interrupted. It will continue to unfold in ways that confirm you were always meant to step into this moment.